The 2-minute weekly message preview at the non-denominational New Hope Olympia is entitled The Impact of a Life. Think about this, all these things can leave an impact. Meteors leave craters, volcanoes, clear forests and bury cities, and automobiles leave dents. When something has made an impact, you know that something significant happened. There's an impression left that can't be denied. We can also change the location of an impact. God is calling all believers and churches to have an eternal impact on the lives around us. Do you ever wonder what impact you have on your family, friends, or people in general? Do you stop to consider how your life matters in this world? Life is precious. It is a gift from God. And every one of us matters to someone. But sometimes, we must stop and wonder if I'm making my life count. Am I making the most of my opportunities to bless others? Am I making an impact? Who has ever heard the name Edward D. Kimball? Doesn't it ring a bell? Well, let me tell you about him. Many years ago, Mr. Kimball was a Sunday school teacher at Mount Vernon Congregational Church in Chicago. It was a tiny little church, and Mr. Kimball's class consisted of just a handful of teenage boys. One Sunday morning, a new boy who had been attending church alone for a few weeks came to class. The boy was unchurched and couldn't find the Gospel of John in the Bible Mr. Kimball gave him. After the boy had been to Sunday school for a few weeks, Mr. Kimball decided to visit him and talk to him about salvation. The boy worked in a shoe store, and Mr. Kimball was nervous about witnessing him. He paced back and forth in front of the store several times before he worked up the courage to walk in. Finally, he stormed in, put his arm on the boy's shoulder, and nervously gave him the gospel. In the back of that shoe store in Chicago, Dwight L. Moody, one of the greatest evangelists the world has ever known, gave his life to Christ. Through Moody's ministry, hundreds of thousands of people have come to know Jesus. A few generations later, one of those people was Billy Graham. If you haven't heard of Dwight L. Moody, you certainly have heard of Billy Graham. What an impact those two men have had on Christ. But if you think about it, what an impact Edward D. Kimball had on Christ. Charles Stanley said, "If you walk in step with Him, God, you will make a positive impact. Your character, your conversation and your conduct. You can have an impact on someone's life by the way you live." In his weekend message, Pastor Dell will talk about Noah and how he lived a life of impact. Pastor Dell will share 5 things we can learn from Noah about impacting people in our relational world in his message. There's a big difference between seeking to make an impression and making an impact.